non-Jewish. And they just wiped our people out. My entire, as far as I know, my entire extended family in Germany were eliminated.
Oh my gosh. So that's probably another reason you were pretty itching to get up there and get into it with them, huh?
Well,
it's personal.
Well, it was and it wasn't. I suppose it was, but not. My dad had been in World War One. He never got in combat because, we weren't into the combat phase in World War One for very long. But we knew that our families were being wiped out in Germany. The Jewish people were being just eliminated. The Holocaust. And I knew it. And I knew that if I'd have been shot down, I probably would not have been a POW. Not for very long, anyway.
Yeah.
I knew that. Didn't stop me.
Well, that is the definition of bravery.
No.
To understand that you are going into a bad situation, that you could lose your life, but you go and do it anyway.
People always said, well, if you've been... What did you... we carried dog tags. And it had a letter on there for religion. It was J for Jewish, or Protestant, P, or anyhow, whatever. They had different letters on the dog tag for your religion. And so everybody said, well, you're not going to put down your religion, are you? And I said, you're darn right I am. I'm not going to say I'm not something I...
Hello, and welcome to another edition of History Whatevea. And I'm your host, James Manning III. Thank you for joining me. And, hey, I want to remind everybody, hey, please do me a favor, huh? Go hit that subscribe button. Just do it, all right? I don't even care if you like me. Just if you hit that, that's fine. You never have to come back to my channel again. But hey, hit the like and subscribe. Please comment on this, because today's episode is something very special, and I'm quite honored to be able to bring it to you and have it sort of archived for the rest of the world to listen in on my interview with Colonel Richard Heyman. He was born in 1924. This episode is very special to me because this is a living part of history. Colonel Heyman was a fighter pilot in Europe, protecting bomber planes as they went in to do their job against the Nazis. He also served over the Yalu River in the Korean conflict, and later served in the Vietnam War. A very interesting and special man that I have had the honor and privilege to interview, and I was so happy to just be able to talk to him. And I'm very thankful that I got the opportunity. And I had a really great time during the interview, and I really feel like others will enjoy the pieces that he was able to impart to me. Now, one thing I will say is there's a little extraneous noise that I did my best to remove. There's some grandfather clock and things like that in the back. There's also his wife, who I asked if she wanted to be mic'd up, and she said no, but she chimed in a little bit during the interview, and I tried to do my best to make that where people could hear it. But I think the point of the interview today, for me, was that I was trying to put on the shoes of what it must have looked like in 1941, 50, and in the 60s during the Vietnam conflict. But I can't do that. So I got the next best thing. Someone who was really there. Now, I will say, a little viewer and listener discretion is advised because some of the language is a little outdated, but I felt it disingenuous to remove because I didn't consider it to be hateful in any way. And I think the opposite. So please be prepared for that. I gave the chance to the Colonel to listen to this podcast before I released it. And his only consideration, his only correction, was that on his dog tags it said J for Jewish, but he insisted that that be changed from J to Hebrew, which remained on his dog tags from there on. I'm releasing this appropriately on Veterans Day, so I hope you have a good one and spend a little time to remember those who went out and put their lives on the line selflessly. And remember the history. Remember the people. And this is certainly one of those days. So I hope you enjoy this special Veterans Day edition of History and Whatevea. But also, get ready for an amazing interview that's going to give us a peek into the look of the world. A look of the world from the eyes of a fighter pilot who was born in 1924. Today, we're here to talk about your experience as a pilot. And please tell us, your name and where you were born and when. And
Okay, I'm Richard Michael Heyman Jr., born in Coffeyville, Kansas in 1924.
1924. So,
I've just passed 100 years old.
Well, that's excellent, And I do want to say thank you so much for taking the time to sit here and talk with me. And thank you to your wife, Barbara, for the correspondence, the incessant calls of which I had delivered. But thank you very much, both of you, for allowing me to be here and get this chance to talk to you. So you were born in 1924. When you were growing up, when did you actually enter the military?
Around the 1st of June. 1st of June of 1942. Yeah, 1942.
1st of June in 1942.
I graduated high school and then immediately joined the Army.
That must have made you about 16, 17?
18. I was 18
right on.
In May and joined the Army just a week later.
Okay, so what made you decide to join?
We had a war going on.
Yeah, silly question.
That's simple.
I
had always been a patriot, I'd say. I belonged to the Sons of the American Legion, and I was a Boy Scout, and I was very patriotic.
Well, the times were very interesting, I would guess, with everything happening in Europe. And, when you were growing up, before you entered the military, had you heard much about maybe the First World War or other things that were happening? Or
Well, First World War, my dad was in the Army. He didn't go overseas because, but he belonged to the American Legion and I belonged to the Sons of the American Legion. I was a Boy Scout and I achieved the Eagle rank. And patriotism in our town in Oklahoma is a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when the war started, I was ready to enlist. My dad said, if you graduate high school, which wasn't a cinch, but if you graduate high school, then I'll sign the papers so that you can join at 18, because at that time, they were not drafting 18-year-olds. And so I graduated high school, and they were starting to draft 18-year-old. But anyhow, I graduated high school, and the next day, I think it was, I joined the Army. And my dad agreed. He signed the papers, and of course, a week later, he didn't have to have your father do it, but anyhow, he did at that time.
Well, you were just ready to go and get after it, huh?
Absolutely. When we got in the war, it was obvious I had to go. I mean, it was my responsibility, and I decided that's what I was going to do, and I did it.
So was it Perl Harbor that really got
Pearl
you?
Harbor happened. Anyhow, as soon as I could, which is when I graduated high school, which is 6 months after Pearl Harbor, 1st of June, I guess it was, in 1942, and I signed up.
Well, as somebody who has never, I guess I got to witness 9/11 happening, but I was pretty young. I was in middle school or something, and that's kind of the closest thing in memory that I have to an event like that. And I can't imagine what it felt like in 1941 to see that happening, knowing that what we've got going on in Europe,
Well, when Pearl Harbor happened, I was in Mr. Crone's basement, Krone, a family friend. And I was in his basement because he had all the woodworking tools, lathe, saws, drill press, everything. And he let me use his tools to make things. And I was building something for my mother. I think it was a breakfast bar. And I was there in his workshop in the basement. And he came downstairs and said, the Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor. And, of course, I stood there and I said, where's Pearl Harbor?
Right.
I mean, it just didn't,
It's pretty far from Oklahoma.
Well, yeah. And, I didn't know where it was. And I'd say 90% of the people didn't know where Pearl Harbor was. But, of course, it found out in a big hurry.
Sure.
And so I said, well, okay, I better get home. So I put all my tools away, which was a requirement, using all of Mr. Crone's tools. Beautiful workshop. And I went home and told Dad, I said, did you know that the Japs just bombed Pearl Harbor? And I said, that's in Hawaii, I'd found out. And he said, yeah, I just heard it. And I said, well, I guess I better sign up. And this was Sunday, though. And he said, well, I'll tell you what. If you graduate high school, and after you're 18, I'll sign the papers so that you can join. Well, it turned out they were starting to draft 18-year-olds, I just turned 18, and so I didn't need his approval. I just went ahead and enlisted myself, but Dad did approve. He had been in World War I, never went overseas, but he enlisted in World War I, was ready to go. And so, it's that simple. I signed up, and I think within a week or two, I was off to an Army camp, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. That's it.
So, and you ended up in the Army Air Corps, right? Which was, the Army Air Corps was before they formed the Air Force.
That's right.
Right? So did you get in right away, or did you have to apply?
No, I was in within a week.
Into the Army Air Corps?
Yeah.
Oh, within a week. And then you just went to basic and got trained up?
I went to basic, and I don't know about the timing, I get mixed up, but I had already taken the cadet tests. So I knew that I could get into flying training because I had passed the cadet test okay. And as soon as I signed up, they said, well, it's about a 6-month wait before you can get into the program. Or you can join now as a buck private and, so I talked it over with my dad, and I said, well, it seems to me like it might be a good idea to get the experience to go ahead and go on active duty as a private and learn something about the Air Corps. And it turned out, it was kind of a stupid thing on my part, but it turned out to be very good. At the time, it didn't seem real, but it turned out to be a very good decision on my part. I got a lot of experience in the 6 months that it took before I got into the cadet program. I passed the test, of course, and so I went in on the 15th of June of 42, and on the 1st of January of 40. Well, it was the end of December of 42, I got into the cadet program. So I started my training then, 1st of January, to, it's called pre-flight training. And
Pre-flight training. So that was like the workup to
learning what navigation was, what...
Oh, basics of air flying. Okay.
Everything. I can't remember what all it was, but it was a 6 months well spent. And so I did that. And then the 1st of January, I started the cadet program. 1st of January of 43 it would be, yeah.
So when was the first time that you actually climbed in a cockpit? And what did that feel like to you?
Well, I have to do it backwards here. I started the cadet program, and that was 9 weeks of ground school, I think. And so I would say around 1st of January, I went to a flight school, Fort Stockton, Texas, somewhere around the 1st of January. I'd already had the pre-flight training at Santa Ana, California, yeah. And then I went into the cadet program 1st of January, 43. There was 9 weeks of pre-flight training. Then you moved to Fort Stockton, Texas, and I got 9 weeks of flying in a small airplane, a trainer. And then I went to Pecos. Was it Pecos? I don't know, another base. And I finally ended up after 4 months, something like that, at Williamsfield, Arizona. Yeah, Williamsfield, which is close to Phoenix. And that's the advanced flying school, and that's where after 9 weeks there, advanced training, I got my wings and was made a second lieutenant in July of 43. 42, 43. Must have been 43, yeah.
So it wasn't long after that you would be deployed, right?
Well, no, I got my wings. That means I could fly an airplane.
Okay.
But now then I had to have specialized training in the aircraft that we would fly in combat. So I went through the training program for P-38s, and that's what I got into the fighter business. And P-38 was a 450-mile-an-hour airplane, damn good twin engine, good airplane, great airplane. And
so was that the first plane that you flew?
First combat airplane.
First combat airplane.
Yeah, but I'd gone through the pilot training of pre-flight, primary, basic, and advanced. That's after advanced, which I said was at Williamsfield, Arizona. And I got my wings and my second lieutenant at that time. That was July of 43. Yeah. So then from there I went to specialized training into the P-38 and got assigned to my group that was going to go overseas as a group. And we trained for, I guess, maybe 5 or 6 months, I'm not sure. Anyhow, in the P-38. And then we shipped overseas on the Queen Elizabeth. Went by boat to England. The whole group. That was 364th Fighter Group.
How was that ride?
great. Think back to when you were 18, 19 years old, and all of a sudden you're turned loose with an airplane with 4,000 horsepower and could go 450 miles an hour, and you go over 40,000 feet, and it could fire guns and cannon and machine guns. And you're only 18, 19 years old.
Yeah, that's wahoo, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that must have been such an interesting experience. You've got all this training. You're getting on a ship. You're going across the Atlantic Ocean. And now you're about to get into more training before the real day starts. You got this
backwards here somewhere. We trained primary, basic, and advanced. That's 3 different bases. Each one was 9 weeks long. Primary is when you fly your first airplane. It's a trainer. Not very fast, not very big, but it had a pilot and an instructor. Then after about 60 hours of flying time training, of course, then you went to basic, which was at Pecos, Texas. And you look up your history about the West, and you'll run across Pecos, Texas. But anyhow, we was in Pecos, basic training, 9 weeks. And then we went to advanced and got a faster, bigger airplane. And we trained in that, and that's when we got our wings and made second lieutenant. And then from there, after the 9 weeks, when we got our commission, and we shipped out to different units that were being formed or had already been formed. Some guys went right overseas to replacements. Others, like me, we went to a group that was just being formed, brand new outfit. Anyhow, we went to our training group, the 364th Fighter Group, not training, our ops group, operational group. And we trained with them, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 months. And then we shipped overseas on the Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, Queen Elizabeth. And got to England. Within a matter of weeks, we had our brand new P-38s, and we started flying combat. That simple.
Okay. What could you tell me about your first combat mission?
Well, I probably was the youngest guy in the outfit because I just turned 19, I guess. And we all checked out in the P-38, and these were frontline fighters at that time. Once we were checked out with the area, so we learned, where our field was, where other fields were. We practiced gunnery, firing the cannon and the guns out of the 38 at targets, either towed targets or ground targets. And after a few weeks of that, too long ago, but after that, anyhow, we got assigned into active combat unit. Our group was declared combat ready. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. And we started flying combat.
So when you say flying combat, what exactly do you mean? Is that just air patrols? Is that dogfighting?
No, in our particular outfit, we were, like most of us at that time, we were assigned as a group to put up 48 airplanes. That was it. 48 airplanes we put up to escort the bombers. The bombers were taking off from England, flying over Germany or France or Holland, Luxembourg, and bombing targets. They would go in a group of, say, 30 airplanes, and then 30 and 30 and 30, one after another, one group after another, of about 30 or 36, something like that, airplanes. And they were carrying the bombs, and we were escorting them so that if the Germans came up, they were after the bombers. They weren't particularly after us, the fighters. They
Right.
wanted to get the bombers because the bombers were bombing the crap out of Germany and France.
Yeah, they're eliminating military targets and
so
stuff like that, right?
Our job was to protect the bombers, so we would escort them. And of course, our speed was about twice what the fighters or the bombers were. So we'd fly up and down the route, because here'd be a group of 30 and another group of 30 and another group of 30, just in a stream, going bombing specific targets. They didn't just go and look around and bomb.
Right.
They had targets. And we escorted them. We would fly back and forth on the stream. And if the Germans came up, we tangled with them.
So, what was it like to see your first, like, wow, that's a
Scared
bogey.
the shit out of you.
Yeah.
Want to know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't.
But we knew we had a job to do,
Right.
and we did it. We escorted. If fighters came up, we would purposely go and tangle with them. I mean,
Sure.
we weren't hiding; we were going after the enemy,
Yeah.
and that was a joy. I mean, hell, we'd trained as fighters. We wanted to get in a fight.
Yeah, it'd been years of working up to where you were.
Especially the
right?
last 6 months of our training was pretty intense. And of course it did, it covered. I mean, from the time I went into the Air Corps as a buck private until I was flying combat was less than 2 years.
It was less than 2 years. But still, that's quite a while to have on your mind. It's like, well, the day is going to come, and then finally...
Didn't even think about it. Boy, we were chomping at the bit. We wanted to get into it. We were fighter pilots, and we were anxious to get into the war. I won't say that's the way it was a bomber pilot, and I don't blame them. They weren't particularly anxious to, and I don't blame them, like I said. But we had the responsibility of protecting the bombers, and it was organized. It wasn't going just jump in an airplane, go up there and look for a fight. I mean, it was an organized thing.
Right.
We'd patrol a certain area. We'd have certain groups that we protected or tried to, and that was our job. And we looked forward to it every day.
Oh, absolutely.
Hell, bomber pilots weren't that anxious, and I don't blame them.
Well, yeah, I mean, as a fighter, you've got that maneuverability.
Yeah.
And the bombers don't quite have that.
No, they had to stay in a group and bomb in a group, not haphazard. I mean, there were groups that did do that, but the groups we had, 8th Air Force, there'd be 30, 35 airplanes in a box, we called them, in one box after another. And we'd patrol up and down that stream of bombers and looking for the fighters to come in. And the fighters were anxious to tangle with the bombers. They didn't want to tangle with us because it didn't do any good, really, to them. We got into fights and shot some of them down. Some of them shot us down.
Well, that's the way that it went back then. And
Yeah.
So were you mostly all land-based, or did you ever have to fly off any carriers? Or
Oh, no.
Oh, no?
Carriers, that's Navy. Carriers are trained. You don't just hop in and go fly off a carrier. That's a technique.
Right.
No, we were strictly ground operations.
Okay. And then could you tell me any specific engagements that you were a part of, or anything that really sticks out in your memory as a day that was particularly scary or harrowing for you? I mean, it's probably every day was like that.
You're talking about how many years ago was
Sure.
this?
Yeah, a lot.
I remember getting into fights. I shot down airplanes. they never shot me down, but I got holes in my airplane a few times.
Ooh. That's awful close.
Well, one shot can take a bird down.
Sure.
If it's in the right place.
What kind of guns were...
Well, we had, in the P-38, you had a 20-millimeter cannon and 4 50 caliber machine guns in the P-38. P-51s and P-47s, they had different armament. They had, well, I don't know, they were different. Anyhow, some of them had 8 50 caliber guns, some had 220 millimeters and so many machine guns. Yeah, that's a 20 millimeter there.
Oh, gosh.
Of course, that's been chrome plated.
Yeah.
This part in your right hand is the part that does the shooting. In other words, this thick part, that's where all the powder is.
Right.
This shiny part in front, that's the projectile. That's the bullet.
Well, I'll get a picture of that.
They're normally not chrome plated.
Normally not. Right.
But there'd be in a belt of 300 shells like that in a belt, and there'd be 4 guns or 6 guns, depending on the airplane that you flew. Some airplanes had three guns in each wing, and some airplanes had like a P-38, it had guns in the nose because it didn't have a central engine. So they put 4 machine guns and a cannon. That is a cannon shell there. That's not a machine gun. That's a cannon.
Well, it's certainly large enough.
Yeah, well, this part's all this. From here up is the projector. The rest of it's powder.
Well, yeah, flying through the air, that would definitely rip a hole in anything.
Yeah.
Especially an aircraft. So P-38, that was your first plane?
First combat airplane.
First combat airplane. Did you fly other planes while you were deployed?
Not on that tour.
Not on that tour?
But later, other wars I flew other airplanes.
Well, we just talk about what happened on this deployment. Like, how long were you flying air combat missions before the end of the war?
Well,
it's probably the whole time, huh?
No. I flew, first of all, with this P-38, I flew a tour, and that was, I don't remember how many missions, but it was about 300 flying hours. Wow. I think. 2 to 3. I'm pretty sure it's 300 hours. Anyhow, some groups you had to fly 100 missions. Other groups, like our group, I think I had 120 missions or something like that. Because our group did it by hours flying time as opposed to number of missions. I don't understand that, but anyhow,
But that's kind of like before you rotate out, right? Or you reach so many hours and they give you a break?
No.
No?
Oh, your tour, most of them were 100-hour tours. Bombers were 25, then 35. They started out flying 25 missions, and believe me, that was enough for bombers. But then they went to 35, and I think they eventually got to more 40 or something. I'm not sure, but the bombers, they had their own quota. And it was, the bombers took the most beating because they were just a big group of them and tooling along at, half the speed that we flew.
Sure, and
said we're maneuvering, and they're not. They're just...
Yeah, and they're being targeted.
Oh, yeah.
More so than the fighters because that's...
Well, the fighters would come up and would tangle with the bombers if they could. Our job was to keep them from doing that. We'd fly alongside the bombers back and forth, because we're doing twice their speed. And we'd intercept the fighters as they came in to try to attack the bombers. So we would get in a fight with... purposely, we were getting into a fight.
Sure.
With the bombers, they didn't particularly like that. Of course, their job was to find the target and bomb it, and they'd be being shot at the whole way in, the whole way out. When we flew, you flew out of England, we'd take off, the bombers would take off first because they were slower. It took a little while to get formed up and make a group of about 30, 35 airplanes, and another group, another group, another group, till you had 600-800 airplanes. And then they start in on this, going across the English Channel, going into France or Holland, Luxembourg, or Germany. And they're flying as a box of bombers, of, like I say, 30, 35 airplanes. And then another box behind them, a box behind them. And we were fighters. We'd fly our group, which was, we built up 60 airplanes. I don't know, 50 or 60 airplanes. In our group, and another group would do the same thing. And we would escort. We'd fly up and down the bomber stream, watching for fighters coming in to attack them. And, of course, the bombers getting shot out with flak, and then on the enemy fighters. And so we'd escort them in, and usually we didn't have much coming out because the Germans were, the bombs were already gone. It was when they worried about that, they're trying to get the rest of the bombers that are coming in with bombs.
Yeah.
But we'd escort them. And they flew, it seemed to me like they had to fly about 35 or 40 missions. I don't know, 25, 30, something like that. And we flew, basically, it was 100 missions, I think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's right because I know I end up with extras. I flew 125 or 30, something like that, missions.
Wow, these are
that's just World War II.
Right. Well, that's a lot of high-profile missions. I mean, those are big groups of. That's a lot of air power.
Yeah.
Going in and flying. You said even over Germany into Luxembourg. And...
Oh yeah. They go in one box after another. They didn't just spasmodically go wherever. They had what they called pathfinders. That was the bomber that led the group. And the others would follow him in a group, say 35 airplanes, and another group 35 airplanes. That's not the right figure, but something like that.
Okay.
And then another one till you have about 800 bombers going in. And it's just going, and they're striking one or two targets. And I don't know how many bombs they carried, B-24 and B-17. I just don't know how many bombs they carried.
A lot.
It was several ton.
Yeah.
And they would bomb their target and come back out. And our job, we'd take off after they did because we catch them as they crossed the channel. When they finished crossing the channel and got into France or Germany, that's when we'd show up, the fighters, and we'd escort them then to keep the German fighters off of them. And we'd escort them all the way to target and most of the way back out.
Oh, my. Well, it's just like what a high stress kind of thing. But I guess if you were just getting after it, trying to protect the bombers, you probably didn't notice how much stress.
Well, you didn't think out of stress. Either you're getting your butt shot off or you're doing the same thing to them.
I guess
you could fly 100 missions, though, and not see an enemy fighter. That was possible, but not probable.
Right.
It was, they kept bringing another group in. We had a tremendous training program. You take a guy and put him in flight training, and in less than a year, he's in combat.
That's a pretty quick turnaround.
It sure is.
Yeah. So, did you fly over Normandy during the D-Day invasion?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen a lot of movies where this is depicted, but most of those movies don't show what's happening in the air. It's mostly the ground troops.
Well, that's the reason. the Germans put up two airplanes. Hitler, they couldn't put up the airplanes unless Hitler said okay.
Yeah.
And he
Right.
was sleeping. I'm serious.
Oh, I believe it.
And they didn't wake him up for 2 hours. This is what we've been told. They didn't wake him up. And when they finally woke him, he said, well, this isn't the real invasion. They're working. We were working over Cherbourg at that time and some other areas. He said, no, this is just a feint. This is what we've been told. The real attack is going to come further east, up the coastline through Germany and Holland, and not just down here at Cherbourg. That's just a feint. Well, and they didn't wake him. This is what I've been told. We were told.
Well, and I chuckled because I'm actually reading a book about, it's called Blitzed. It's going to be another episode, but it's all about how like people, the Third Reich was using these drugs, and Hitler was also being injected with like vitamins and things like that. And he had a personal doctor, but there was a point after they had taken France where he made everyone stop and he took back control of the military. So he was sort of losing it because these guys were, anyway, that's another podcast.
Oh.
But he was a very strange individual.
Well, sure.
And of course, I mean, look who we're talking about. But that was a big thing, that he was struggling with controlling some of his armaments. So I absolutely believe that he was sleeping.
He was a corporal in World War I.
That's right.
And now that all of a sudden he's commanding thousands of troops.
Yeah.
I'm not a psychiatrist, so I can't really delve into his thinking at all. But some of the things he did were marvelous for an untrained fighter. Some of the things he did were just out of this world as far as attacking certain areas. And some of them were pretty damn dumb they did too, but of course we can all say that after the war is over.
Right, yeah.
But anyhow, he was the big boss, and they had to do what he said.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and he was the end all be all. There was no other choice. I mean, yeah.
Well, anyhow, he was smart enough to get the right people to be his lieutenants, you might say. He had to be a damn smart guy when it came to, because, oh well, I can't get into the thinking for the war. I was just a peg in the big scheme.
Well, and so many really were, and it's really hard to get an overarching view of what was really going on, because it was such a large, event. I mean, we were talking about a whole world at war, and now we're kind of focusing down to this one microcosm of this particular.
It's been said, and I'm not the one really to answer my question that I would ask you, but it's been said that he was a deciding factor on everything. He decided when they were going to attack the lowlands, what I'm talking about, the lowlands, Belgium, Holland, the countries that are down at sea level.
Right.
He was the one that made the decisions on when to attack Russia. That's where he made his mistake. Mm-hmm. But up until then, hell, he was home free. He was well on his way to ruling the world until he attacked land that was Russian.
Well, yeah, and it kind of makes me think in a strange manner, because I've never encountered anything where it was like, whoa, this is really could happen, and back in those days, nobody knew what was going to happen, and it had to be stopped, because we've already seen what happened to France. We saw what they were doing to the English, and then
the English fought. Boy, they fought. There was no two ways about it. France capitulated just way too early. and they end up with VC France. The biggest thing was that they were worried about with France when it folded, that the Germans were going to get all their machinery, ships, tanks, everything.
Right.
And I'm not familiar with enough to know really what happened, except that they didn't get all of it.
Well, it seems like there was a pretty big retreat, but a lot of them just decided to. I can't remember exactly how it
Well,
went.
they just left their machinery and they gave up.
Sure.
And ended up with just VC France, which is a little corner of France. It's all south. Yeah, it'd be the southwest corner of France. But Belgium, Holland, they were just given on when France pulled out and gave up. They had this Maginot Line, Maginote, I think, Maginot Line, with all these fortifications. To cost. They built that after World War One. Tremendous firepower, great armament, everything. Only thing is, the southern end of it ended up in Switzerland, a neutral country. Real easy if they had to. They could march across that. There's mountainous, but they could have. The northern side, though, it didn't go all the way to the ocean. And if it did, the part it did, which was Holland, they wiped them out right away. And they could come around and around. And they came into France. I mean, it was simple.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if there's an opening, that's
sure, they came around. They didn't come across the main, where it was really tough battle equipment and everything. They came around. Oh, well.
Well, I mean, I just love hearing about this because it's coming from a perspective of someone who lived it, who felt the emotions, who wasn't sure, who watched things happen and heard the reports on the radio from right there.
Yes
right?
and no. With my situation, young second lieutenant or first lieutenant or even a captain, it was, here's the job, go do it. Here's the mission for the day. And our mission was to cut them off, which was planned by Eisenhower, people like that. They planned and they knew what they were doing. It didn't depend on a Hitler to decide where to go.
Right. Yeah, it's much more compartmentalized than just like the one leader in charge.
It was with using the smarts.
Yeah.
But Germany made their mistake. In my estimation, it's been said too. The Germans made a mistake in attacking Russia and Poland before they had really secured France to its entirety and the British Isles. Britain was fighting the war by themselves.
Yeah.
Until we got into it. And of course, that was Hitler came unglued when he found out the Japs had attacked Perl Harbor and all but anything that he didn't know that was happening. Because he knew that once we got into the war, that was the end.
Oh, yeah.
And so he got us. We wouldn't have gotten into war except that Japan attacked us. It had probably been another year before we got into it. Something would have happened.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how the First World War started, was the transport ships, the civilian ships, and they started torpedoing American,
Yeah.
And then that's how we got into it because we were supplying.
Yeah.
But
that was a big mistake on our part, but that's what happened. But anyhow, the Germans, no use getting into what the Germans were or weren't.
Well,
my family was wiped out in the Holocaust. Before the war even started, my family was eliminated.
Wow, so you had family in Germany?
Oh, yeah.
In the 1930s, 20s?
Yeah.
And
that's where my family had come from.
Oh my.
years before, but yeah.
Yeah, I had my step grandmother actually escaped to Germany and lived in Shanghai for a while because of that. Yeah.
Well, I'm Jewish, and they just wiped our people out. My entire, as far as I know, my entire extended family in Germany were eliminated.
Oh my gosh. So that's probably another reason you were pretty itching to get up there and get into it with them, huh?
Well,
it's personal.
Well, it was and it wasn't. I suppose it was, but not. My dad had been in World War One. He never got in combat because we weren't into the combat phase in World War One for very long. But we knew that our families were being wiped out in Germany. The Jewish people were being just eliminated. The Holocaust, and I knew it. And I knew if I'd have been shot down, I probably would not have been a POW. Not for very long, anyway.
Yeah.
I knew that. Didn't stop me.
Well, that is the definition of bravery.
No.
To understand that you are going into a bad situation, that you could lose your life, but you go and do it anyway.
People always said, well, if you've been... What did you... we carried dog tags. And it had a letter on there for religion. It was J for Jewish, or Protestant, P, or anyhow, whatever. They had different letters on the dog tag for your religion. And so everybody said, well, you're not going to put down your religion, are you? And I said, you're darn right I am. I'm not going to say I'm not something.
Yeah, absolutely.
No.
Really? Okay. So did you encounter people who were anti-Semitic in
my service?
Yeah.
Not just the war? You're damn right I did. Sure. Yeah.
Well, it just seems strange to me what, America has gotten into it. We're going to put an end to what's happening over there with the Germans, but yet that's something that we can't really shake because there seems to be people who just have a different ideology, even though they're
people that you could have Negroes fighting alongside of you, but you might hate them anyway.
Yeah, so strange.
Well,
but didn't seem to bother you.
No. I had a guy moved into the room right next to me, and he asked me to come over and have a drink. And I went over there, and he had 2 glasses, and he was having one. I'll get this. I'll wash this glass out for you. I said, well, you've washed it already, haven't you? Yeah, but I said, you're worried because you're black and I'm not. That color don't wash off, does it? Yeah. And then from then on, we were good friends.
Yeah. That's all it takes, a little relating to each other, And, well, I have a hard time because I try to put myself into what used to be. That's why history is so interesting to me, because I'm trying to get an idea of what it really was like,
You can't wear my shoes, no matter how hard you try.
That's right.
You have to have some personal connection, a relative, a very good friend, anything. And maybe you're capable of surmounting that problem. I don't know you that well.
Well, I just think everybody's equal, no matter.
It's nice to say that, but in the back of your mind, you might have some prejudice too.
Well, we all do, and it's a part of.
And the thing is can you surmount it?
Right? Can you put it aside? Moving past it? Well, and it's something we all have to do.
I got my little Shiksa wife here, you see.
Oh. Yeah, that's funny. My stepdad Peter, he's Jewish, and my mom loves to throw that word around. I was like, "You married a shiksa, Peter," and he just laughs, and but it seems to be a part of the human experience because we always are looking for groups to be a part of. And it's just sort of, especially in America and coming up in the times that you did, it's a part of the game. It's not something that can be avoided.
Yeah, well, it depends on the person.
Absolutely, it does.
What other questions you got for me?
Well, I was going to ask you about how many tours did you serve in World War One? Or two, I'm sorry, World War II. I apologize, we were talking about that, but how many, you flew a lot of missions.
I had one complete tour. Yeah, I had one complete tour, and I was getting ready to go for the second one in the first jet fighter outfit we had in the war in the country. But the war ended before we got in combat.
Oh, so you didn't get to fly in the jet?
Not in combat.
Not in combat.
We had the 412 fighter group. That was the first jet outfit the Army Air Corps had. 412 fighter group.
The 412 fighter group.
You won't find much about that in history, I'm sure. But anyhow, that was a jet fighter outfit. And we had the worst airplane I've ever flown in my life. What the hell is it now?
F-105?
No, that's a great... No, yeah, there's 105 there. That's an airplane. I love that airplane.
We got. I did look up a few of the airplanes from some of your other interviews. So I got F-84, A-26, P-51, P-38, P-59, F-105, and the B-17. Or the
Take familiar... that B-17 off there. I had one ride in it.
You had one ride.
I didn't fly. It wasn't in combat even.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
All right. We won't count that one.
I never even flew it. I just was in it. I don't know why. I had to go somewhere, I think. Anyhow. Yeah. My bomber experience was with the A-26, which is an attack airplane, but it really was a small bomber. Yeah.
Well, so I did want to ask you about some of your experiences flying over Korea as well. You were a part of that.
Yeah, well, my claim to fame, I was flying an A-26, which is a light bomber, and I shot down an enemy airplane at midnight. That's my claim to fame.
Oh, yeah. The bed check Charlie.
Yeah.
Right? So were these were Russian-made? This was a Russian-made airplane, right? That you shot down.
SO2, I think, or something. I don't know what it was. But anyhow, it was a light trainer type aircraft. It wasn't much of an obstacle.
Yeah, well, there wasn't a whole lot of flying that
Su-22, that was it. Sorry.
Su-22. But, yeah, so, I mean, what was that like? Because I know that over Korea, there wasn't a whole lot of air. Like, we had total air superiority by that time in 1950, right?
Well, no. They never admitted, Russia never admitted, as far as I know, that they flew in the Korean War. I don't know. But the MiGs that were in there were damn good airplane. They were as good, not quite as good, but almost as good as the 86. Good airplane, in other words. And they were flying that in Korea. Actually, but they were basing them across the Yalu River, which we couldn't cross.
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, it was my understanding that they were supplied by, the Russians were giving them stuff. They weren't flying them, but
we never knew for sure.
Never knew for sure,
No.
right?
I have no doubt that Russians were in there, but so what?
Yeah, it didn't matter.
No,
Yeah.
except they were better than the Koreans were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were better trained. They were been at it longer.
So did you fly a full tour for Korea as well?
Yeah, I flew a little more than a tour. I think about another quarter of a tour. We flew not by hours, or did we? I can't remember.
Well,
We flew, I think it was supposed to be 100 sorties. No, the 26, with the B-26, we flew 75 sorties, I think. And the fighters were flying 100. The F-86 and F-84s. So I was flying the A-26. I flew more than required. I think it was 25 extra missions. I don't know.
So what were most of these missions? Were they protecting bombers like they were?
No. We were strictly carrying bombs. And we were carrying bombs and rockets and missiles. We'd go out. We were a flight of 4 normally, and we'd go out and attack certain targets. Yeah,
That was most of
that's in Korea. Yeah,
the air there. So there wasn't a whole lot of air combat. It was mostly just targets. And
no, there were the F-86, F-84s first, then the F-86s got into a fair number of fights, but we weren't flying jets at that time. We were flying the A-26, which is a twin engine. No, we did. Our group, the 3rd Bomb Wing. That's what I was in. I can't remember the squadron number. But anyhow, we had A-26s. Yeah.
So did you serve for the entirety of the conflict, like from 50 to 53, or?
We had to fly 50 missions or 75 missions. The fighters flew 100. The big bombers, I think they only flew 50. Whatever it was, I flew a tour and a half. I flew 1 tour and then flew another half of a tour. Yeah.
Well, it's that's a lot. That's a lot of flying time. That's a lot of hours.
Oh yeah, but that was just Korea and Vietnam, or World War II. Vietnam, right. I flew around 100 missions in Vietnam.
So you got out of the service for a while.
I was out for a while. I was still on in reserves. I flew just about every weekend. I'd go down to Oklahoma City and fly.
Keep your skills up and.
Yeah. Maybe every other weekend. And yeah, I went down there and flew quite a bit. So then I was recalled and went right to Korea. Well, to Japan. Then I stayed in service. My business that I had went to hell. Guy running it for me. And yeah, so I just stayed in service. And I was flying 105. I flew, I can't remember everything I flew. Anyhow,
well, it was a while ago.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I flew A-26s in Korea. I know that. shot down an airplane one night at flying 26.
Was it you were just on patrol, or did you end
No,
up having to climb in and
I
get
was
after
bombing
it?
targets. I had I don't know, 6 bombs, I think, in the bomb bay of this airplane. And I'd already expended them, and I got a call that needed somebody with ammunition because I still had my 50 caliber machine guns.
Right.
And so I answered, and they said, well, we got a bogey over here at such and such location. And I said, okay, give me vectors. And so their radar, they used their radar to direct me to where the bad guy was. And I tangled with him, shot him down.
Well, that's the point where all that training and all the hours in flight, it was like, all right, here it is. Let's go do this. You get the call on the radio.
I'd done that in World War II anyhow.
Sure. You were ready for this guy.
Yeah.
Well, so you went back into the service and then flew combat missions over Vietnam.
No, that was over
Well, that was Korea, right?
Korea. Yeah, I flew 50 or 75 missions. I don't know which. I don't know, but anyhow, I know I stayed there for an extra 25. They needed me. And, then I came home. And I was stationed in Oklahoma, 25 or 50 miles from my home. And I still had my business going. And so they appointed me as the base salvage officer. And did that for a while. And finally I went to the wing commander and I said, sir, you're going to get yourself in trouble. And he said, what? I said, you got me as a base salvage officer. 50 miles down the road, I got a salvage business. It's still mine. It's still running. You know, I said, some inspector get a hold of this, me running a business privately and doing the same thing in the service. I said, that's pretty dangerous.
Right.
We might get in some kind of collusion.
Like a conflict of interest, right? Yeah.
So he took me off of that, put me in back in flying, training the cadets. That was it. And yeah, I left my scrap business. I had a fellow running it. It was going into the ground, so I just closed it. But in the meantime, they took me off being salvage officer on the base. Anyhow, I ended up back in England.
Yeah, you went to Texas first before England, didn't you?
Yeah. I ended up in England. In Germany. I don't know. Anyhow, excitements.
Sure.
And
you went to England, and that's where we met.
yeah.
As Germany came later, we both went there.
Right.
I'm tired.
Oh, well, it's a long time ago.
Sure is. Yeah. Too many other happy events happened.
Sure. Well, and this is kind of times that were stressful, and
well, I ended up in SAC for a while flying B-47s, and that was a fate worse than death, I thought. But anyhow, I survived it. And actually, I was in Germany. I was in charge of all the fighter standardization and American fighter standardization in Germany. That was it. And I got my assignment to Pease Air Force Base. And that was B-47s. And oh, no. And so I wrote to friends that were in high places to get me out of this. Couldn't do it. That was my assignment. So I went to B-47s and ended up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
So you weren't a fan of the B-47?
I wasn't a fan of bombers.
Oh, okay. I got you. You wanted the fighter pilot
Yeah.
position.
That's what I'd always flown. And boy, didn't matter. There was a lot of us, a whole bunch of us that coming back from Japan and coming back from Europe, all ended up in B-47s. Oh, and if I had to fly a bomber, that was probably the best. I mean, it wasn't as big as a B-52, which was fine, but I didn't. Anyhow, I flew B-47s, and then when the opportunity came up to go to Vietnam, anyhow, I volunteered to go because I could get out of B-47s. It's a good airplane, but I didn't, it was bomber.
Well, that was your ticket back into fighter.
And the fighters.
Well, and that would be jets by that time, right? You were flying like jet airplane fighters, right?
Yeah, I was flying jet airplanes, yeah. But,
because over in World War II and in Korea, were they still prop planes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then what did you end up flying over Vietnam?
F-105s.
Okay. There's the 105 I was talking about.
Great airplane. Big air for a fighter, single engine. It was a great airplane. I flew 1.5 tours.
I know you flew 100 missions.
And then went back for more.
Right.
I think I flew 125 missions or something. Huh?
I said you left me in the Mojave Desert
Yeah.
the second time. First time I was at Oxnard.
Yeah. What else can I tell you?
Well, that's part of it. You have to go and follow your calling.
Well, the assignments come in. You don't always get what you want.
Yeah.
But it didn't hurt me. But I made colonel.
That was in Europe after Vietnam.
Yeah, after Vietnam.
You were in Turkey.
That's right.
You weren't stationed there, but you were in Turkey.
No, I had the responsibility of training all the non-U.S. forces that had nuke weapons.
Whoa.
That was Germany, the Netherlands.
NATO.
Yeah, all the NATO nations except France. They all had nuke weapons, nuclear weapons.
Right.
And my job, I had a small unit. We had to go out and test all the units that had nuke weapons, see if they were handling them properly and flying the mission properly, training properly. It was a good job. But anyhow, then I got promoted out of it. Ended up made colonel. And then I transferred, and this is what hurt. Had all this fighter experience, and I was transferred to Pease Air Force Base, New Hampshire.
No. Syracuse, after Germany.
Was it Syracuse?
Yeah. You'd already been to Pease.
Oh, well, somehow or another, I ended up B-47s. Then I got back in fighters. How in the hell did I do that?
You were in fighters in Germany because you were testing them, right?
Yeah.
The 7 NATO nations. From Germany, we came back to Syracuse for 5 months, and then eventually to Colorado Springs.
Yeah. Now I got out at Colorado Springs.
Right.
Yeah. I had a tacky valve, that's right. Yeah.
Well, that's certainly quite the career.
Yeah.
Well, and I did what I could, and I found a list online of some of your commendations. Well, maybe you can tell me if this is a complete list or not. But the Air Medal with 13 oak leaf clusters, American Campaign Medal, Army of Occupation Medal, Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 oak leaf clusters, Korean Service Medal, Legion of Merit, National Defense Service Medal, Silver Star, United States Service Medal, World War II Victory Medal, the Coup de Grace, I believe, which is a French medal, and Air Force Commendation, Longevity Service Award, and European African Middle Eastern Campaign Medal. So this is just what I could find, as well as you being inducted into the Royal Air Force Museum of America Foundation Hall of Fame.
He will be.
He will be. That's in October. Well, it's not very often that I get a chance to sit down and talk to someone who has seen so much, really had a very long and distinguished career as a pilot. And I just want to say thank you for taking your time to sit down with me. And it really is a great honor for me to be able to sit here and hear, about your life and what you saw and how much you've actually come through. And I guess I did want to ask you about this. So I heard that while flying one of your missions over Korea, you ended up in an A-26 that didn't have heat and froze one of your feet.
Yep, sure did.
Yeah, so what happened? Did it just malfunction or did it just not have one?
It was a design deficiency. And this particular airplane, for some reason or another, didn't have the proper ductwork in the down around my feet.
Right.
Yeah, froze my feet.
Jeez.
Then I was flying. The mission was about 6 hours long and it was up over the Yalu River, which is pretty cold up there in wintertime.
Oh, absolutely. That was one of the biggest problems for soldiers in Korea was the cold.
Yeah. Anyhow, I froze my feet.
You stepped off the ladder and
Fell,
didn't you? You slid off when you got out of the airplane.
just bam, I went all the way down. I had no feeling in my feet, didn't know it. Yeah.
Well, that's quite a story, and a lot of really great stories, and I think we'll probably wrap it up. We've been on for over an hour, but
Well,
hey.
I didn't mean to carry on so long.
Oh no, we'll keep going if you want. We could talk about anything you'd like, because we didn't talk much about what missions were like over Vietnam. I mean, you flew a lot of those, and but it's totally up to you. We could keep going, or we could call it quits.
I don't mind. It's Vietnam was a different type of fighting, but still people dying.
Sure.
What did I do? 1.5 tours in Vietnam. I went back.
Yeah, you did 9 months the first time, then went back for another 10 or so.
Yeah. I flew about a tour and a half. They got me out of an assignment I didn't want.
That was mostly, you're like, all right, well, if I can go back to flying fighter, then we'll, that's what I'll do. So it was just always your passion, flying. That was just what you had from the very beginning. That's what you wanted to do, and you followed through.
Yeah, I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate that I stayed in, mostly of the time, I stayed in fighters. B-47 is the only time I didn't really, because the A-20, A-26, is that what it's called? Yeah. It was oversized fighter. But it was really a light bomber. Yeah.
What was your favorite? If you had to pick one, what was the favorite plane that you flew that you had the most fun in or you liked the most?
Well, the thing is, the first combat airplane I flew, just a marvelous airplane, and that was a P-38.
Right.
And so to take a 19-year-old kid and put him in that airplane, that just was marvelous. I mean, God, I was king of the roost.
I bet.
19-year-old kid. Went back to my hometown. It was great.
I bet that's better than driving a Corvette. It goes a whole lot faster.
I tell you, that 38, I was very fortunate. I mean, that was a hot airplane. And then the P-51, they were two of the best airplanes there were. And to fly them both, oh, God. That was just a marvelous thing for a 19-year-old, 20-year-old kid to be doing.
Even though it was dangerous, but it was just what you were wanted to do.
Oh, yeah. No, the 105 was a great airplane, and I really liked it. But it was a big, monstrous, single-engine fighter. And I really liked it. But they were two different times, so I couldn't say that I liked the 105 better than I liked the P-38 or the P-51 because they were different time frames.
Right.
So I can't compare them. I mean, I enjoyed flying both of them. But that 105, that was a monster. It was a big airplane.
Yeah, it probably went a whole lot faster, too.
Yeah. But
so the bigger the plane, are they harder to maneuver in the air and do things?
Well, it depends on design. If it's a bigger airplane that's designed as a bomber, it doesn't maneuver the same.
Right.
If it's a bigger airplane that's designed as a fighter, depends on if it's designed to go fast or what it just depends on the design of the aircraft. You can't always compare them because an F-4 was a good fighter, but it was designed as a bomber for the Navy. But it turned out to be a darn good fighter, and publicity was great. But I liked the 105 better than I did the F-4. To me, it was a better airplane. But publicity-wise, I mean, they really had the forces out on that. They had Congress bamboozled. That F-4, that's the airplane.
Well, you have a very unique perspective flying so many from different time frames. And going from like a prop airplane with two engines to a single engine jet plane.
Well, the first jet that came out was called what the hell was it called? I can't remember. But anyhow, the first jet that came out, they bought 50 of them, I think. And I was assigned to the outfit that had them. And it had to be the P-59, that was it. Had to be the worst airplane I ever flew in my life. It was the first jet. Oh, God, it's terrible.
So P-59's not high on the list, huh?
No, it was a jet. That was the only thing I could say about it. Every frontline fighter we had would outmaneuver it, outfly it.
The interview kind of stops abruptly here because at this point we get up to go and look at some of the pictures and some of the plaques that he was awarded and medals and things like that. But I can't explain to you how much fun I had in just getting to talk to this guy. And I feel incredibly honored that I had the chance. And I just want to say thanks again to the Colonel for taking his time and recanting the memories and giving us a little peek into what really it was like, a real life account from someone who lived it. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of History and Whatevea. And, hey, leave a comment. Give me a like. Subscribe. If anybody's still listening out there, hey, tell me if there's a topic that you like in history that you want me to cover. Come on. I'm here for you. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for listening, and a big thanks to Colonel Richard Heyman. Have a good night, everyone, and thanks for listening to History and Whatevea. I'm James Manning III.